As you are painfully aware after years of listening to me, I am not much of a biblical scholar. To me, the Bible can be very uplifting, often inspiring, but it also can be very confusing. If you've noticed the last few weeks, I've not even put the insert in because it seemed to me that the passages for that Sunday just didn't seem to fit the spirit of what we're trying to convey, and yet some of you said, well, Don, who gives you the right to do that? And I kind of go, well, my name's on the sign. That's what I'm supposed to do. You know. For example, in the second lesson for today, toward the end, there are words that by just saying them, they can kind of lift you up. Because the author talks about living with love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, and gentleness. And somehow just hearing those words makes you feel better. But then in the gospel lesson for this morning, Jesus is looking for followers. And the first one says, I will follow you, but let me first go back and bury my father. And Jesus says, let the dead bury their own dead. That does not sound like the Jesus I know. I mean, the Jesus I know would go with him to bury his father and bring donuts. That's the kind of Jesus I thought he was. The next person says, I will follow you, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. And Jesus says, nobody who puts a hand to the plow looks back and is fit for my kingdom. I cannot imagine Jesus talking like that to anybody. I mean, when Jesus' friend Lazarus died, the first thing he did was cry. And time again, people brought the sick and the dying to Jesus, and he would touch them and raise them up. You can't just read the Bible on the surface and take it at face value. Sometimes you have to take the risk of reading the Bible with your heart and with your soul. The story about letting the dead bury their own dead, it's really about looking ahead. Because when it comes to our faith, I guess he doesn't like what I'm saying. When it comes to our faith, and when it comes to living life, we cannot let the past hold us back. We have to have the courage to move forward. When you come in here, each one of us has a past. We have stuff and baggage and luggage that we carry with us. We miss somebody. We have unfinished business. We have some successes and some failures. We bring all that together, and the thing is, the message of Jesus gives us the courage and the hope to move ahead and not be imprisoned by what happened before. It's easy to use the past as an excuse not to move forward. But Jesus gives us the invitation and the hope to do that. As painful as it may be, we are not here to let the bury their own dead. We are here to honor the dead, to honor those who have gone before. I don't want to get stuck in the past, but I never want to forget the past. So Friday, I was at the National Military Cemetery in St. Louis. We had John's funeral here a couple of weeks ago, but as a veteran and being from St. Louis, he wanted to be buried in the National Military Cemetery right there, and he was. I got there really early, and I got in my car, and I looked at the trees. I looked at the rows and the rows of the tombstones. I could hear the sounds of the past yelling. I could hear the sounds of freedom and the sounds of hope. And I knew that life is not about letting the bury their own dead. We got to bury the dead. We need to honor the dead. We need to see that as sacred space. We live in the shadow of those who have gone before. We are not prisoners of the past. We are set free by those of you who have served us in the past. So I had some time before the service. And so I went down the road and I found a Waffle House. There's about 75 Waffle Houses between here and St. Louis and through Indiana into Kentucky. And so I walk inside the Waffle House on the corner, and the server greets me and says, welcome. You're not from here, are you? She said, I bet you're from Chicago. I must have had that Chicago city slicker luck about me. And I sat down over some coffee and some grits and some bacon, and she was polite. The servers obviously are like a family. They enjoy working together, and everybody that comes in the Waffle House on that corner has a place to sit. It's kind of like going to church. And I just watched the people. I watched the banter. I listened to the stories. And I thought to myself, this is America. Not the violence, not the terror, not the guns on the south side of Chicago. America is a spirit. It's the freedom to order breakfast. It's the freedom to be buried in that cemetery down the street. It's the freedom to collect money for an animal shelter at the church. It's waving the flag on the 4th of July. It's the factory worker in East St. Louis. It's the gay pride parade on the north side today. America is the freedom to celebrate the power and the diversity that we have as God's people. And those tombstones, a soldier named John, a Waffle House on the corner, a church on LaGrange Road, somehow in the middle of all this ordinary stuff, this is where God lives. This is where Jesus walks. Had a funeral here Thursday for a veteran who never darkened the door of the church. He was a Southsider. And I read Ecclesiastes 3. Surprise, surprise. For everything there is a season. And I discovered this man who doesn't go to church, he had 3 seasons in his life. The White Sox, the Bears, and the Blackhawks. And I'm not sure if that's what Ecclesiastes had in mind. But anyway, one of his buddies gets up to do one of the readings. He's a big guy. If you had to make a caricature of a man who grew up on the South Side and drinks old-style beer, this is a picture of the man you would draw. And he's having trouble getting through the reading. He's all emotional. He starts to cry. And after he leaves the lectern, I get up from my seat, and I go give him a big hug. And I said, thank you for reading that. I know this was hard. And he looks at me. He says, Reverend, I'm an atheist, but I do not feel like one right now. A bit later on in the service, we had communion, and I invited everybody to come forward. And I'm giving out the bread, and I come to him. And he's kneeling at the altar. And I give him a piece of bread, and I say, the body of Christ given for you. And he looks at me, and I look at him. No words, but the silence says it all. Somehow, some way, in that moment, Jesus walks, and God's Spirit was there. You know, I'm not exactly sure what an atheist is. I'm not even sure what it means when it says, let the dead bury their own dead. But I do know this. That cemetery that is full of men and women who served, that cemetery who is full of all those people who give us the freedom to believe or not to believe as we choose, the freedom to march and to be who we are, the freedom to get up and face a new day, those of us that have a past that's not easy to let go of, you may be an atheist. You may work 8 hours a day in the Waffle House. Your ashes may be buried miles away. But when there's goodness and kindness inside your heart, God cannot be very far away.